All right, so I'm really excited about our next guest. He's the co-founder and CEO of Whole Foods, and unless you've been living under a rock, you've heard of them. How many of you shop at Whole Foods? Just out of there you go, all right. And they're obviously an industry leader in providing natural and organic foods. Started the company, Whole Foods officially started in 1980. And John really is a rags to riches story. Started out Safer Way, which was the original concept, scraping together some money from family and friends, and has grown it based on what I read online. And everything you read online is true. We've already discussed that, right? Yeah. Right? No. That's a joke. This crowd gets that. But they did $15.7 billion in revenue. I do believe that is accurate. And in 2016, have 473 stores, and are one of only 11 companies to have earned a spot on Fortune magazine's annual list of the 100 best companies to work for 20 consecutive years. I mean, that's impressive right there, right? He's been recognized as Fortune's World's 50 Greatest Leaders, Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year overall winner for the United States, the Institutional Investor's Best CEO in America, Barron's World's Best CEO, MarketWatch CEO of the Year, Fortune Businessman of the Year, and Esquire's Most Inspiring CEOs. So if you are sitting there thinking you're hot stuff, you might feel a little more humble, as I do, all of a sudden. But really why I brought John to talk to all of you is because of this book. It's a book called Conscious Capitalism. And I first was introduced and heard him speak at my friend Joe Polish's event, which is about a year, maybe a year and a half, maybe even 2 years ago, maybe a year ago. And I was so inspired and so impressed with his passion for being an entrepreneur, with his insights into what he's talking about in this book of conscious capitalism, of business being a win for all the stakeholders and having a higher purpose for your business than just making money. And all that resonated with me so much that I wanted to bring him here today. So with no further ado, let's bring up Mr. John Mackey. All right, so you've got a lot going on recently.
Yeah, a lot.
Okay, so I think that was a pretty impressive intro, and I shortened it because you didn't want a big preamble, and I think you're a very humble person, I get the sense.
It depends on who you talk to, I suppose.
Okay. Well, that's my impression. And is there anything I didn't say that you would want the audience to know about you before we get rolling?
No.
Okay. So the main reason I brought you here is because of this book, because of conscious capitalism. And the book really is, in a sense, your passion and your reason for this is that small business owners, entrepreneurs, capitalists are the heroes of the world. And I really love that because I don't think any of us hear that enough. So tell me about the book. Tell me about the concepts in the book, because I think some of the audience may not have read it. So explain that concept.
Okay, well, suppose I want to write the book for a couple of reasons. The first one is that I do think business is the greatest force for good on the planet. I do think business creates more value in the world than governments and nonprofits combined by many factors. And if you look at it from a historical perspective, when capitalism was created, over 85% of everyone alive 200 years ago lived on less than $1 a day, and that's in today's dollars. Now we're down to about 14%. Illiteracy rates were over 90% across the world. The average lifespan was 30. The average lifespan today across the world is 71, and 78 in the United States, almost 84 in Japan, the longest lived nation in the world. So, and that's capitalism, that's business. Business has done that, but it hasn't gotten credit for it. Instead, there's a larger, as my friend Ed Freeman, kind of the father of stakeholder theory, says, there's a meta-narrative in our world about business, and that meta-narrative is business sucks. And business people are a bunch of sociopaths running around. All they care about is money. And they're greedy and they're selfish, they're exploitative. And that's kind of the way business is seen. I mean, the stuff that's written about my company and about myself, for example, it just never ceases to amaze me. And attacks by politicians, extortion, not to mention just most ridiculous things, like the merger with Amazon is going incredibly well. I love Amazon, but the media is now making up things that they say I say, and I don't. And you'll only hear positive things from me about Amazon. I think they're an amazing company. I'm very, very happy to be part of them now. So that was the first reason, is to try to begin to change the perception people have about business in the world, which I think is just a tremendous injustice. And secondly, sometimes business people are their own worst enemies. We don't market ourselves very well, quite frankly. We don't brand ourselves very well. We don't tell a good narrative about business. We don't talk about the value that we're creating, and we don't resist the narrative that it's all about maximizing profits. And so the class enemy of business throughout all history, if you think about it, it's been intellectuals. Intellectuals do not like business people, as a general rule. I think primarily driven by envy. Business people, they don't think business people are very smart, but they make more money than they do. And that seems to be the basis for the great concerns of injustice in the world. It kind of roots back to that, I think. But business people, I mean, look, business has a higher purpose. Every business can create value for other people. And think about it for a minute. So this is one of the first tenets of conscious capitalism, is potential for higher purpose. So if you go to a cocktail party and you ask somebody who's not in business what the purpose of business is, they'll look at you like, that's such a weird question. I mean, what do you mean? Everybody knows the purpose of business. The purpose of business is to make money, right? That's kind of the default answer. But if you think about it, it's an odd answer, because what's the purpose of a doctor? To make money? No, doctors heal people. That's their purpose. And yet, they're very well compensated. And they're some of the highest paid people in our society. But that doesn't mean that's their purpose. Teachers educate. Architects design buildings. Engineers construct things. I challenge you, every one of the professions will refer back to some type of purpose beyond making money. And yet, here's business, who creates more value than anything else in the world, put in this narrow box that is just about making money. Mm-hmm. Now, a good metaphor I like to use is that, look, business can't exist without making profits, okay? It's necessary. Profits are good. They're not bad, they're good. That's how we make progress in our world. My body produces red blood cells. If my body stopped producing red blood cells, I would die. It does not follow that the purpose of my life is to produce red blood cells. And yet, I need them. Businesses need profit, but that doesn't necessarily logically follow, therefore, that the purpose of business is to make money. It's just what they need, the fuel they need to fulfill their purposes. So that's the first big idea in the book, is the importance of purpose. And this is beginning to catch on. It's beginning to spread and become... If you think about all the businesses you most admire in the world, every one of them has a higher purpose. Every one of them. Google, to organize the world's information and make it readily accessible. Southwest Airlines, giving people the freedom to fly. Whole Foods markets, Whole Foods, whole people, whole planet, helping heal people, help heal the agricultural system, help heal the larger planet. And these type of purposes help unify the business and give them that massive transformative purpose, inspires the organization to strive for a higher level. The second big idea in the book, second tenet of the book, is the importance of stakeholders. And, you know, I first got that. My very first year at Whole Foods Market, we'd opened the highest volume natural food store in America at that time, back in 1980. And 7 months after we opened the first store, Austin had a 100-year flood. And we were wiped out. We had 8 feet of water in our store. And I mean, I remember it was when I was told that we were in the 100-year flood zone, I said, "You're saying I'm going to get a flood once every 100 years? Okay, I'll take the risk." First year, flood. And we should have gone out of business, except for one thing. We were saved by our stakeholders. The community did fundraisers to help Whole Foods Market. We were bankrupt, and they raised.
You didn't have insurance, right?
We didn't have flood insurance. That was the first thing I did, was scurry over to the remote office where we kept the insurance policies, and they all fire, theft, earthquakes, but floods, no. You had to get flood insurance from the government. And so we were wiped out. But we saw our stakeholders rally to save us. So the community held fundraisers. They held musical festivals to raise money for us. We saw the day after the flood, we came in to clean up the mess. And we had customers that were in there helping us clean up the store. And they were just our neighbors who shopped our store. And so I'm looking around, I'm thinking, I kind of recognize these people, but I know they don't work for us. And they were our customers. And they helped us clean up the store. Our team members, they worked for free for the next 30 days while we tried to get reopened because we didn't have any money to pay them. Of course, they were paid back once we got open. Our suppliers fronted us new inventory based on my signature, which I assure you was worthless at that time. We saw the investors kick more money in, and we saw our bank loan us more money as well, again, based on my signature. What I found out later was the higher-ups in the bank knew my signature was worthless, so they wouldn't approve the loan. So the loan officer himself took the risk. He co-signed the loan. I didn't know about this till many years later when I was talking to somebody at that bank. I said, "Whatever happened to Mark Monroe who signed that deal?" "Oh, yeah, I remember Mark. Yeah, I remember when he co-signed your loan to get back in business after the flood." I said, "What?" Wow. "Yeah, he co-signed your loan." Moral of the story is, our stakeholders didn't let us die. I didn't even know the word stakeholder at that time. But when I first read about it, I realized, oh my God, yes, this is what business is about. Business is about creating value for all of these interdependent stakeholders, customers, employees, suppliers, investors, and the larger communities that we're part of. So once you become aware of the interdependence of stakeholder groups, like say I'm in the retail business, it's kind of a simple business to understand. Management's job at Whole Foods is to go hire the best people we can find and make sure they're well trained, and then make them happy. Because when our team members are happy, they serve the customers better. It's a secret to being on the Fortune list for 20 consecutive years. We just make our people really happy. And then they make the customers happy, and happy customers makes the investors happy. Everybody's happy. It's a good way to run a business on the happiness principle. So stakeholders is number two, and then the third tenet is just leadership. We need a different kind of leadership today in America than we have, and we need a different kind of leadership. I say the type of leadership we need today is one that's more servant leadership based, more about serving the organization, serving the purpose of the company, serving the stakeholders. And that's very different than what you oftentimes find in corporations or large corporations where people are clawing their way to get to the top of the hierarchy and then taking outrageous stock options or restricted stock grants to try to get as rich as they can get in the 5 or 6 years they might have when they're the CEO. And then finally, and fourth tenet, is the importance of a healthy culture. How many people here are running your own businesses? I'm just curious. So one of the things that I found out pretty early on is that if you hire a good team and you keep them, well, they make you look good. They help your business to be successful. So creating a culture that allows your people to thrive so they won't be hired away by your competitors is just smart business. So those are the four principles: purpose, stakeholders, leadership, and culture.
Okay. Now, one of the things I thought of when I was reading the book, and I love the idea of stakeholder integration and win, 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 win. Right. And then you go out into the real world where they eat their young, where you're doing something to make an employee happy. You're doing, what you can, whether you can afford to, and they're not happy, or you're doing what you can to make a customer happy and trying to, I love the idea of it's a win for everybody, but you and I both know that not everybody is going to appreciate it. So to whatever you can speak to, how do you know where the line is between, oh, I'm taking too much money, and maybe I should take less money and give more to my employees, or I'm asking too much of my vendor, maybe I shouldn't push him as hard for that discount. What wisdom can you give us on those lines? Because I think that's the blurred line, and that's probably where you get criticism, because they're saying, oh, look at you saying that it should be a win for everybody, but yet look at this. So everybody has their definition.
Business is always attacked.
Yeah.
Business is attacked for not being absolutely perfect or living up to some type of utopian ideal that we don't hold doctors or lawyers or anybody else to the same standard business is held to. But to a large extent, markets determine it. Competitive markets and market processes determine market rates of pay. They determine what you can price things at. So those are guidelines. So there's no magical formula. It's about being aware of your stakeholders, aware of trying to consciously create value for them, and you're doing that in a dynamic, competitive marketplace. So, I mean, Whole Foods pays very well for the retail business when we pay more than our competitors do. But somebody can always come out and say, well, you're not paying a living wage. And it doesn't really matter how much you're paying. I mean, I'd like to say, as far as I know, our team members are not dying. But somebody can always say you're not paying you're not paying a living wage. You can pay a market wage, you can pay above the market wage, but you can always ratchet that up to a higher rate. I think one of the biggest things that people misunderstand is the importance of the supplier stakeholder. This is one where it's routinely, you're just trying to get as much from your suppliers as you can. You're in this competitive tussle. And I think a better way to approach it is they're your partners. And you develop a high trust relationship with them where it's a win-win. You don't take absolutely every last nickel you can get off of them, but you don't let them take advantage of you either. You can't be a sucker or a fool. I'm not arguing for that. I'm arguing to be a very aware, conscious person who's simply aware of what's going on, and you can see when people are trying to take advantage of you normally, and you don't tolerate that. But you also aren't the asshole that's doing the taking advantage of everyone. So it's why we call it conscious capitalism. It's about being conscious and aware of these things, and doing the right thing by everybody to the best of your ability.
Right. And I think that when I read the book, some of the things that I think that have made us successful, like the purpose, the higher purpose, like I shared with you what it is for this group, and in attracting people. But now that I'm aware of it with what you wrote in the book, I can be more intentional about it. Because I think for me, what the book did was summarize some principles that I was sort of doing. But once you become aware of it, like you're saying, you're conscious of it, then you can be more aware of it. And where did the 4 principles? I mean, when did you come up with the 4 principles? Was there a defining moment? Was it just an evolution?
I don't think it was a defining moment. I think it was an evolution, and it's in dialogue with people that are on the same journey. It's not like I went on a mountaintop and God handed me the principles of conscious capitalism. It was in a dialogue with other companies that were doing the same thing, and we're talking about how do we make business more of a force for good? How can we use it to help elevate humanity to a higher place? How can business help humanity to progress? And we argued about it, and we came up with the 4 principles. And I mean, I might have led the way on that, but I certainly was not a singular accomplishment by just me by any means.
Right. So I was reading the other day, we are at a 40-year low of new businesses starting. So the entrepreneur, if you look at that statistic, you could think the entrepreneur's dying. And at the same time, we've had Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. I've talked to Robert Herjavec from the sharks at Shark Tank. And when you talk to them about their show, they say that they think the popularity of it is that people love that entrepreneurial dream, the dream of having an idea and being able to create a business and start a business, but yet at the same time, we're looking at this 40-year low. So why do you think that this is, I mean, are you aware of this trend? Do you have anything to comment on that?
I think the entrepreneurial spirit is almost America's greatest competitive advantage. I mean, we've always brought immigrants in that are entrepreneurial inherently. When they come in, it takes a lot of courage to root yourself up and go to another country for sure with your family. I think the reason it might be at a low is because it's so much harder to start a business today. when I started Safeway that became Whole Foods Market back in 1978, I mean, we just opened our doors. I mean, we actually skirted a rule or two. I mean, we didn't have that much money. We opened our business with $45,000, and they said you had to go downtown Austin and get a building permit if you wanted to do your remodeling. I went down there. I talked to somebody at the city, and they said, well, we need this, and this. And I said, wow, that's going to take forever. I can't afford to do that. And he said, sorry. And I went and talked to the landlord, and I said, this old guy, about 85 years old, a Lebanese immigrant named Eddie Joseph, and he said, I told him the problem. He said, John, the city will bankrupt you. Here's what you do. All those bureaucrats go home at 5 p.m., sometimes earlier. So what you do is at 6, you come in and you do all your construction at night. So that's what we did. And statute of limitations is long past on this one. But yeah, we got our store open, and but then we didn't have all the permits that you needed. But then they just come in and say you needed a permit, and we'd pay somebody. But now it's so difficult, so much more difficult to do. It's so much more difficult for companies to go public because of Sarbanes-Oxley and the type of regulations and hassles. And there's increasingly sort of a hostile attitude, at least in some, maybe not in Nashville, but in part, like we have a lot of stores in California, and it's like, you know, it's like they hate us or something. I don't know. They're just forever coming around, harassing our stores, health inspectors, weights and measures people. And there's a real gotcha mentality as well. So I just think that discourages business formation. We're not making it easy for people to start businesses.
Yeah, it's not good either.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to talk to you a little bit about premium pricing and how this fits into conscious capitalism, because we've all heard the jokes. Whole Foods is whole paycheck, and it costs so much to go in there. Now, in Franklin,
doesn't cost anything to go in there.
No, it doesn't cost anything to go in there. And the other thing is nobody's holding a gun to anybody's head to go in and shop, right? And I love your comment about business is completely ethical and fair because there's no requirement for you to buy from Whole Foods. You don't want to go to Whole Foods, you don't go to Whole Foods. So, but I here in Franklin, and it's a very small bubble, I'm sure, but I'm sure it goes on everywhere. But there's a Publix very close to my house, and there's a Whole Foods. At lunchtime, I can't even get a parking spot because they serve lunch food and it is no at Whole Foods, and you can't even get a yeah. I mean. Well, Publix has like a little chicken, but it's not like, the buffet. But I mean, but you go in there and it's an experience. I mean, literally the place is swarming, but so the point I'm making is you can say all you want that they charge too much in premium pricing, but you just look at what's going on. Anecdotally, in one town, you've got all these other grocery stores, and you're surrounded by restaurants on top of that. And literally, you cannot get a parking spot at lunchtime. You got to park all the way in the back, and people do, So one of the things I want you to talk about is this premium pricing, because I think in doing that, it allows you to invest more in having a more interesting store, better quality people. And these are all entrepreneurs in the room, and they deal with this a lot, with the whole concept of clients don't want to pay for premium prices. I can't charge that much. And so I think a lot of it is a dilemma, like how much do I charge so I can at least cover the bases and invest more into the business without overpricing. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, first, we invented a new category. I mean, other people are selling sort of vitamins and supplements and we call them pill stores back when we got going. But we were one of the very first companies that opened a natural food supermarket that was kind of one-stop shopping for people that wanted to eat natural, healthy, organic foods. And because our mission, one of our first core values is to sell the highest quality natural and organic foods in the world. Whole Foods has always had this commitment to sell the very best we could find, the best foods available, the highest quality. And the quality always, there's a premium for quality in every category you can think of. I mean, nobody thinks BMWs or Lexuses or Mercedes or Teslas are inexpensive, because they're not. They're expensive. But they're also super quality automobiles. And it's the same way in clothing, same way in housing, and vacations, and every kind of thing you can imagine. There is sort of a premium or super premium category. And Whole Foods didn't start out to cater to a premium customer. We were just a bunch of hippies selling food to other hippies. That's really how we started out. But we invented a new category, and we were committed to selling and finding the highest quality food we could. So we were always more expensive, and we grew our business because nobody was selling the same foods that we were selling. And truthfully, they're still not. They really aren't. But what they're doing is they're copying our marketing, and they're pretending to be the same, but they're not. They're not selling the same type of meat we're selling. They say they are, but in fact, I know our competitors, I know where they're getting their stuff. It's not the same. Only we've been so successful that they are copying it. And so that is putting market pressures on Whole Foods prices. So we didn't even have a pricing strategy. We just were committed to selling the best food we could find and marking it up at such a level that our business could take care of all of its stakeholders. And it wasn't until competition came in later and began to compete, particularly in the branded items, that we had to start reducing our prices. I think one thing I want to say on it is, of course, one of the reasons Whole Foods Market wanted to merge with Amazon was because we had the whole paycheck narrative. That's a very powerful narrative, and truthfully, we were unable to change it ourselves. We dropped our prices a number of times, and all it did was hurt our gross margins because the media would never report on it. They'd come in and they'd go find still stuff that was expensive, and they'd say, see, they didn't change anything. They're still really expensive. But the Amazon narrative is so powerful that when we announced the merger and we announced our first round of price cuts, of many rounds of price cuts to come, the media went crazy about it and reported it, and so our traffic counts went through the roof, and our prices did go down, and yet we're getting a lot of people in there to take another look at us. If you go in expecting to find things that are expensive at Whole Foods, you'll find them. But if you go in with a different attitude and you're looking for deals and values, we have those too. So the Amazon narrative, in a sense, was so powerful, it overwhelmed the whole paycheck narrative, at least in the short run. And now it's up to us to continue that momentum with additional price reductions and additional programs that we'll put in. But I think they've broken that spell, and only Amazon, I think, had the powerful enough narrative to overcome that one with Whole Foods. Right. So, but the main message, answer to your question, if you want to have a higher pricing, you've got to create more value for your clients. It's that simple. You've got to be seen as the best. When you're seen as the best, people will pay more for it. And if you're not the best, then you're not going to get away with having the highest prices. It's that simple.
So when you start out early, were you you weren't advertising we're the most expensive. You just advertised. I mean, you were.
That wouldn't be a good marketing
no,
strategy.
it probably wouldn't. Well, I mean, there are certain products and categories where they try to make, the
people talk about their quality,
yeah.
and they don't talk about their prices being the highest. They always feel like any good business person is going to believe that. I mean, look how expensive a Tesla is, but they believe it's the best automobile in the world, or it's worth paying for it. But they're not advertising it as, the S model is one of the most expensive cars in the world. That would not be good marketing strategy.
Right. So it's they advertise the quality, and the price, of course, follows with that. But and you mentioned a couple times as you've grown your business, I think, and everybody in this room can relate. There's all kinds of things that go wrong. You get people who are trying to undermine you, and it could be even not just competitors or the media. It could be just you hire the wrong employee, or your family doesn't like you working as hard, and you're starting to get too successful and making too much money, and you're changing, so there's threats all around. And when you started, I want you guys to know, he started the company like from scratch, from nothing. He didn't have a lot of investors. You went through the flood where it devastated you. You started it from the ground up. How did you overcome? How did you stay inspired when you're being attacked, when you're dealing with all these problems? Talk about that a little bit.
We weren't being attacked when we were small and young. America has a love affair with with small business, but it mistrusts large corporations. That's a simple fact. One of the great movies of all time in America was It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart, right? Jimmy Stewart is a reluctant business guy. He is a business guy, but he takes over his father's, sort of troubled Bailey's Building and Loan, and because he's creating value for people. He's making loans to people so they can afford to buy houses. He's portrayed as a hero in that movie. But there's a bad guy in the movie. Who's the bad guy in that movie? Mr. Potter. And he's that sociopathic business person who only cares about money. And Jimmy tells him off at one point in the movie about, you're just a greedy, crabby old man who just doesn't like to see anybody happy. And so when Whole Foods was up and comer, we were more like Bailey's Building and Loan. People loved us but when we went public, we started reporting large profits. We're the same company with same values, in fact, Whole Foods is a far better company today than it used to be, and we've done far more good in the world as a result of our success than we could have done when we were a small company. And yet, we're now mistrusted. People think we're, apparently it's a bunch of sociopaths running around now at Whole Foods. Same people, a little bit older, apparently went over to the dark side. Right. So,
is that the media, do you think, or is that just?
I think it's a larger meme in American society. Right. If you look at the polls, small business is genuinely loved in America, but big corporations are seen as they're just basically seen as bad and evil and greedy and selfish and exploitative and those in the room, if your business continues to succeed and grow and you start merging together and you become a big corporation, you too will one day remember what I said, is that I think that you cross a threshold where people stop loving you and start mistrusting you.
Is that because they see the success and the money and they think, it's almost like a belief system people have that if you make a lot of money, you have to have taken advantage of people. Yes. You have to have done something illegal, bent the rules. And that's not to say that there are people who have made money that way, but that's
I think, Robin, you just hit it, actually, because if you think about it, sports and war metaphors dominate people's thinking about business, and maybe Darwinian metaphors as well, survival of the fittest. But in sports metaphors, there's a winner and there's a loser, right? And business is different. In business, there's lots of winners. Everybody can win, actually. Even your competitors can win because you help them get better because you make innovations, and your competitors help you get better because you can study what they do. They keep you sharp. But what happens in business, if somebody becomes wealthy, there's a tendency to think that's causing someone else to be poor. That's not true. In fact, there's a rising boat, a rising tide that's lifting all the boats. But that's ridiculed, at least from the left, as trickle-down economics. That's held in disdain, although it's simply factually correct. If I could show you slides here that would show you that the inequality in America today is no different than it was in 1774, 1860, 1920, or today. There's been remarkably, the highest, the richest classes get about the same take of national income as they were getting.
So the percentages are the same, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What's changing is that the middle class is hollowing out, and you read about that. But you know why it's hollowing out? Because a higher percentage are moving into the families that make over $100,000 a year has gone from like 6% 50 years ago to 21%. So there's fewer people in that middle because there's more people in the upper. I would say that's a good thing, not a bad thing. And also the lower percentages are also declining, although not as fast as any of us would like them to.
Right, and I think that's a conversation for me, and I think for many of you, when you read this book, is understanding that making money is not a bad thing, because I know when my mother was deeply religious and hammered into my head from the time I was a kid that money is the root of all evil, right? And it's easier for a camel to get through the eye.
You didn't hammer very
No,
well.
not well enough. Thank goodness I've got a thick brain or something. But, I mean, it's easier to get a camel through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven. I mean, that's
Right.
and I think all of us, to a certain degree, when we succeed, that you get it's almost like you hide it. I mean, now here in this venue, we celebrate it. And we don't want to celebrate it in the sense of making people jealous, in the sense like when someone has a win, we want to celebrate, we give them an award. We actually gave away a Tesla to Charles. Where's Charles? So
He's out driving the Tesla.
Yeah, yeah. And but I think you have to have, what's important, I think, for all of you to read the book and understand is that the conversation in your own mind can be as damaging, more damaging than people telling you this. Because if you do think money is the root of all evil and that capitalism is bad, and if you grow, I must be taking advantage of people. I mean, that's a conversation I think each entrepreneur needs to wrestle with in their own mind as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I really, until you deeply see how powerful envy is, and how it motivates people, until you see it in your own soul, until you see other people react to you in envious ways, you won't really understand human nature. Envy is a very, very powerful emotion, and it's always in disguise. No one ever, very seldom does somebody want to come out and nakedly admit, I'm like super envious of you. If they do it, they've already kind of conscious, and they're not that envious. But I mean, I saw it at an early age because my brother has been envious of me. Both my siblings have been envious of me since the day I was born.
Are you the youngest? Or?
I'm the middle.
Middle one.
Actually.
All right.
Without getting into my family history, but the point of it is that if you're going to be successful, as you move higher, your friends, your family, they're envious of you. And I always say that you can tell really who your true friends are a couple times in your life. One, when you've been really successful, because your true friends are genuinely happy for you. They really are. They're celebrating your success because they feel like it's their success too. The ones who aren't your friends, you can tell they're just eating away. They're not happy. They're envious of you. And you can also tell when bad things happen to you because your true friends, they're not there smirking, sort of secretly glad, aha, boy, now the mighty have fallen. Now you know how everybody else lives. No, your true friends are really there and really caring and really helping lift you up. Those are your true friends when you're most successful and when you hit a big pothole in the road. Your true friends are there both times, and everybody else is just hanger-oners or seeing what they can get from you.
Right. Yeah, I want to ask you another question. I want to save time for the audience, but I heard you comment and tell a story about a young man who came up to you. I think he was 25 years old, and he was seeking your advice, and he said to you, I want to be you. And your comment to him was like, okay, let's trade places. I would trade places with you in a hot second. If you could, I could be 25 again, and you can be me, and you can have all the wealth and all the success. And he was shocked by the answer. So talk about that a little bit.
I think you just told the story.
Well, no, but...
But I'll get the punchline of it.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, because, look, I go to universities, and, I've had a good story. I've been very fortunate. I've been very blessed, no doubt. I'm a very fortunate guy. I've achieved all my higher purposes. I'm deeply fulfilled as a human being. And so when I meet young people, I speak at a lot of business schools, and, I get some young people that come up that really admire me, and it's true. One time somebody came and said, Mr. Mackey, I so admire you. I so much want to be like you someday. And I looked at him and I was like, hey, dude, I'll trade places with you. He said, what do you mean? I said, what you don't understand is that it's the journey that really matters in life. I would love to start over with nothing and be 25 again because it's been such a fun ride. I have no doubt I've been fortunate, and I may not have been, different circumstances, I may not have accomplished as much, but I still would have been on the journey of life. I'm much more towards the end of it now, and the journey is what matters, not arriving. People strive all their lives to get to some place, and they get there, and it's like, well, what next? It's the journey itself that's so deeply fulfilling. And in my experience, building a business has been the most fun. There's something more fun in life. I never discovered it. Building a business is so much fun. And mentoring people, watching them grow, creating success for people, having people flourish along with you, a shared journey, it's so much fun. And so I would rather do the journey again and be poor than be where I am and rich, but, I'm 64. So it's like, yeah, I'll swap with you. There's a movie that comes out every 5 years or so where, you sort of swap, somebody, you become young and they become old, and it's a movie that Hollywood keeps remaking because we're sort of fascinated about that. But I would definitely love to make that swap.
Yeah, when I heard you say that, that's the point I wanted you to make, because I think that there are days when you're just exhausted by what's going on, and I think, when I look back on my life, sometimes in the darkest, most difficult things, it's the most poetic time of my life. You look back, it doesn't feel good when you're going through it at the moment, but I love that just as a reminder that enjoy the journey. It's not just about where you arrive, because the horizon always moves, where you could go next, how much more you could do, how many more lives you can impact.
Look, we're always going to find challenges in life, and that's part of what makes life sweet. You find the challenges, you overcome them, and that feels really good. We need to be challenged to be the best that we can be. But, I always say if you really want to be happy in life, if you just cultivate these two things, you'll probably end up being happy. One is to truly know gratitude, because I've never met a person that was grateful that was unhappy. If you just practice gratitude every day and remind the things that you should be thankful about, because life is such a miracle. It's so amazing to be alive. Have a body and move and love and do things. It's just such a blessing, such a gift. And secondly is forgiveness, because nothing will rot your soul more than holding on to petty grievances. You can't really be grateful if you are nursing petty grievances, because they fill your mind with this, gunk.
Toxic,
so very toxic. So gratitude and forgiveness and love, of course. Those are the three big ones for me.
Right. Okay. One more question, and then we'll turn it over to you guys, so you can think of some questions you'd like to ask John. Amazon question. Now, you and I talked in advance, and I know you can't tell too much, so I don't want you guys to wear them out asking a bunch of Amazon questions. Tell us what you can, and then we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, well, I've already said I'm very happy with the merger. Whole Foods Market, as competition grew, Whole Foods Market ended up having, stock declined off these ridiculously all-time highs. We never should have been up there in the first place. But you're still compared against the very best that you ever were. It is true what they say about Wall Street. It's very short-term focused. And what have you done for me lately? It's just the quarterly earnings pressure is intense. And when our earnings declined, our same-store sales began to decline, we got a shareholder activist came into Whole Foods back in April, and immediately urged us. Well, when I met with them, they basically said, I met with them, and they came into our offices, and they did three things. First, they made us watch a 30-minute PowerPoint about how awful we were. And it wasn't even all accurate. I kept saying, that's not true, that's not true. And I asked them, would you leave the PowerPoint with me? I have a few things I want to check on. They said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to show it to everybody, but we're not going to let you look at it and have good comeback for it. Then secondly, they said, okay, look, we want you to throw out, we had 12 members of our board. We want you to replace 7 of them. And we want to have veto rights on those 7. So I want to take over our board. And then we also want you to put the company up for sale, which they call do a strategic review, which is Wall Street talk for put it up for sale. And they said, it was on a Wednesday, and they said, well, you have until Monday to agree to these. And I said, well, what if we don't agree? And they said, you'll find out. I don't think you're going to like it. And then they got up and left. So that was my exposure to the only time I ever met with Jana Partners was then. And it's like, okay, so our management team talks, and we think, we began to pursue 2 independent courses. One independent course was, how do we stay independent? How do we protect ourselves from these guys? So we hired consultants and lawyers and bankers, wasted a huge amount of shareholders' money, I might add, to make sure that Whole Foods Market was not taken over by these guys or doing what we could to prevent it. And secondly, we began to say, well, if we may be forced into a sale, who would we want to consider being sold to? So without going into all the other potential people there weren't that many, but there were a few that I thought would be very good partners for Whole Foods. But at the very top of the list was Amazon. It's like, those guys, I mean, they are like the perfect fit for us. And so the story that I can tell you is how that all came about. So I had met Jeff Bezos a year and a half ago now, and I really liked him. Very brilliant guy, a good sense of humor. I thought pretty unpretentious guy. Showed up in a very authentic way when I interacted with him. And we had a good connection. And he even said, man, you're an interesting guy. Let's get together and talk. I said, hey, that sounds good. I never heard from him, but still, I really liked him. And I thought, but I don't know how to get hold of him because I don't know how to contact him. So, but one of the consultants we hired to help defend, I was talking to them about did they know anybody that we could help connect up with Amazon? And one of the guys says, well, I used to be college roommates with Jay Carney. And Jay Carney was Obama's head of communications in his administration. And then he went on to Amazon, and he's heads up communications for Amazon. I said, I could give Jay a call. I said, please do. And then Jay talked to Jeff, and turned out Amazon would be very interested in talking to Whole Foods. So I flew up with 3 executives to meet with Jeff and 3 of his senior executives. And so I always like to say that we were kind of set up on a blind date, because that was really kind of the first time the 2 teams met. And I also say that it was kind of, because I think rather than war and sports and Darwinian metaphors, there are other metaphors we can use to describe business. So I'm using a metaphor deliberately here, but I think it's pretty accurate, or a good reference point. We actually fell in love the first time we sat down and talked with them. So remember the time that you fell in love, or some of you may have fallen in love lots of times, but there's the conversation you have, right? You may stay up all night and have this conversation, but you click with somebody and it's like, wow, this is great. And that happened to us the very first time we sat down and talked with them. It was like, these guys are so bright. They showed up and they're just so unpretentious. They had lots of good ideas. And when our team left and huddled in a restaurant, we were like, those guys are so incredible. I really like those guys. And it was like, do you think they liked us too? And it turned out they did. They felt the same way. The head of M&A was in that meeting. He called his team and said, cancel all your vacations. This deal's going to heat up really fast. And it did. 4 days later, they sent a whole team down to Austin of senior executives. We had an 8-hour conversation that time, and it just continued to click. And we basically came to terms pretty quickly on a price, and they had to do some due diligence, a lot more than I would like to have given, because part of me was thinking I was like the biggest fool in the world. It's like these guys are, they don't, Whole Foods markets, you got to put this in perspective. I know the numbers. Whole Foods market was bigger than their 10, we were 10 times bigger than their next largest acquisition they've ever done. We were a bigger acquisition than their 20 next largest acquisitions combined. And Amazon has a reputation for building instead of buying. So part of me was like terrified that these guys are just going to, learn our intellectual capital and then, leave us at the altar, so to speak. But, that's what I was afraid of. But my gut said, no, I had this special encounter with these guys. I had to fall back on my own gut, my own judgment, and so did our team. It's like, we think we can trust these guys, so let's move forward and let them, look a lot longer under the kimono than we would like to have had them look. And they, I guess they liked what they saw, and we were engaged 6 weeks after that first meeting, engaged to be married. We signed the merger agreement, and continuing the metaphor, but it was like an old-time romance where we had to have we had chaperones. We weren't really allowed to be alone together. I'm serious, because there's all kinds of rules about big corporations merging that you can't talk about. A lot of things you can't talk about. You can't talk about competition. You can't talk about price. You can't talk about all the things you're going to do together. Once you sign that agreement, you kind of are, until the regulators approve it, until the shareholders approve it, you really can't get together. So we could not, so to speak, consummate the engagement until we actually were married. And that also happened at record time. We got that done a couple of months after the engagement was announced. That's about all I can tell you about Amazon. I cannot tell you the things we're going to do together. And those were people want to ask, how we're going to change the grocery business and all that stuff. We've not said anything about it. When we announced the merger, it was one-page press release, and neither Whole Foods nor Amazon has talked to the media. I have not talked to the media since then. I'll never talk to the media again. In fact, at least in, there may be media in the audience right today, but the point is I won't go talk to reporters and things like that because they just twist everything. Yeah. It's incredible how dishonest. There needs to be a conscious capitalism for journalists.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the truth. All right, so if you have a question, go up to a mic, and we have got about 20 minutes. Leah, go ahead, you start.
Mr. Mackey, I have listened to a podcast that you did on how I built this. I listened to the Genius Network presentation, and I'm halfway through your book. And I don't remember where I listened to it, but you talked a lot about how you dealt with your detractors, the people that would say negative things about you and your business from all sides. And I just wanted to kind of get your take on, how you just seem to be very wise in what you were saying. And sometimes when I'm with either a client or a prospect, and they're saying something real negative about IT, like, oh, well, IT is just a necessary evil. Or, yeah.
Necessary evil, huh? It's like that's the foundation of business now.
Well, right. That's what I think, too. And that's what I like to say. I like just go, ha, ha, ha. What the? But, what would you suggest I say with a little more, elegance?
I think I just said it. No, seriously. I mean, that may have been true 30 years ago. I mean, it's not true today. I mean, IT is the most important part of any business, and it's getting more important.
I mean, Amazon's a technology company for the most part.
That's why I said they were, one of the reasons I thought they were a great partner for us, because Whole Foods Market, I would say, was, I make a joke, we were like the class dunce in technology in some ways, and now we're like the head of the class in retailing. So it's very, very important, and it's almost impossible to devote too many resources to it. That's what's interesting about the people in this room's business, because I would have loved to have had, when we got started, we were using mechanical cash registers. That's how, and I remember the first electronic cash registers, like, whoa, it was like magic. Look, it adds this stuff up. So now, I mean, it's so important. So you clearly, if they're your client, you don't want to be disdainful to them. In some way, they may be testing you when they say something like that. They're trying to see how you're going to react. So, if, in my own opinion, though, if a person is continually rude, and I don't like to do business with jerks, and you can always pick your clients to a certain extent. So, if you can't form a good relationship with someone, then maybe that relationship wasn't meant to be.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Mackey, I'm in love with Whole Foods. I think you guys are the most socially responsible.
We're already married. I'm sorry.
I think you're one of the most socially responsible companies of this generation. And I'd like to hear more about how you partner with small businesses and you elevate the small businesses up and you give those small businesses more of a chance than any other corporation in America today.
Do you mean our suppliers in terms of?
Yes.
I mean, there's so much. This is a very interesting time to be in the food business. There's more innovation occurring in food right now, I would submit, the entire history of the world. And I mean, it's just changing so incredibly rapidly. And just consider a few of these interesting facts. How many of you have been to a farmer's market at some point? There were no farmer's markets 30 years ago. They didn't exist. There were odd one maybe here and there, but they didn't exist. When I was a boy growing up, ethnic foods, that was Italian food, okay? That was ethnic foods. Pizza, like, whoa, this is like from Italy. How cool is that? But now, ethnic foods are everywhere in America, and they're mating with other ethnic foods and having babies, because there's all this fusion going on, Korean barbecue and sushi tacos, and it's incredible what's happening. We're internationalizing our food thing. There's also amazing innovations that are occurring in the restaurant business there's just an explosion of new concepts. How many people here have been to a food truck at some point? How many of you were at a food truck 20 years ago. Oh, come on, there were no food trucks 20 years ago. 30 years ago, how about that? But the point is, so much innovation is going on. So Whole Foods can't even keep up with it, and we're right in smack in the middle of the business. So kind of answer to that question is, there's so much innovation going on by there's small farmers, there's small manufacturers, there's all kinds of new products. I mean, how many people have ever drank a drink like, it's really a hot one in Whole Foods, kombucha? Some of you have, and that didn't exist 10 years ago. I mean, it didn't exist in a commercial form. So the point is, we've got to work with our small suppliers because they're at the cutting edge of things. That's a win-win-win relationship. If we create barriers for them, and that's, of course, one of the ways the media is run wild on the Amazon deals. Oh, my God, Whole Foods is not going to be a good place anymore for small suppliers anymore. And that's just lies. Of course, our business model is dependent upon bringing in entrepreneurial businesses and helping them to flourish, trying to get out of their way, giving them opportunities to see if their products, their ideas can spread. And we want to do everything we can to support them. And now, actually, what's interesting is if it's a non-perishable good, even a perishable good, the Amazon opportunity makes it even bigger because you can get trial at Whole Foods and then potentially you graduate to the larger Amazon network as well.
Right. All right. Tom?
First, thank you so much for bringing Whole Foods to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So I can't wait for the store to open because we have nothing like that there. My question for you is, with all the negative media or with sites like Glassdoor or just disgruntled ex-employees or unhappy past customers, how do you deal with all the emotional haters that come your way?
Well, for one thing, don't ever read comments in articles. That's my first advice, because the haters just go into the comments and it's unbelievable. I learned that lesson painfully. They say, it takes 10 positive comments to overcome one negative comment, right? But I actually think it's more like 50. And so how do you deal with it? I mean, you have to maintain a positive attitude. You have to understand where people are coming from. Most of the people that hate me have never even met me. They just read something or they got some opinion about Whole Foods and you get all this negativity from people who don't know you. So I think it's really their problem. It's not my problem. It says something about who they are as individuals and people. So I can't be letting, if you know who you are and you know who you are, you have confidence in yourself and you're trying to be an ethical, good person, then you just can't let all those attacks. It's got to be water going off a duck's back. Otherwise, it'll cripple you. So I've gotten stronger over the years by simply realizing that people, they just didn't know me. They don't know me. If they knew me, they'd like me. I fundamentally believe that.
And I think, sometimes if you have a higher purpose and you focus on the good, because it's not all bad, but I think as human beings, you tend to, if you read 50 comments and one's negative about you, you'll boil over that one and overlook the other 10 or 15 that are good, or one bad employee, and you forget to look at you've got 20 great employees, so it's, because that's usually the case.
You're always going to have, you're always going to have some ex-employees, right, that didn't fulfill their dreams and they're bitter towards you. They haven't taken a look in the mirror and asked themselves, how do they need to change? How do they need to do better next time? Instead, they become a victim. It's somebody else's fault. And that's a sad thing, but again, I can't do anything about changing other people. I have to worry about myself and continue to do what I think is best and right. And that's the way to live life.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll go over here.
So you spoke a little bit about the importance of making employees happy. I know this is a bit vague, but could you give us a couple tips on doing so?
Well, for one thing, we try not to manage by fear at Whole Foods, meaning my way or the highway. If you don't like it, get out. You're always threatening people and making them scared. You're not going to make them very happy. They're not going to feel very secure. So I think the first thing is to try to make people feel safe in the workplace. They're not worried about their jobs all the time, and you're not trying to intimidate them or manage them through fear. It's far better to treat people as adults and with respect and with dignity. And it's the golden rule, gang. I mean, you do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I mean, you treat people just the way you'd like to be treated yourself. And who wants to be yelled at or bullied? I mean, nobody does. And so I will tell you one thing that we do that we end all our meetings on. So this is kind of a tip. This has been very powerful for the overall consciousness of Whole Foods. We end all of our meetings with a round of what we call appreciations. And they're voluntary. Nobody has to appreciate anybody else. But it's not unusual for us to nurture little petty grievances and little judgments that can get exacerbated in a meeting because you disagree with somebody and then you start finding fault with them silently and you're in a very judgmental place. When you get to the appreciations, it's very, very difficult to maintain judgment of someone who just authentically said what a great person you are and how much they like and admire you and thank you for what you did for them. It's like, I think maybe I was wrong about Tom. I got to rethink how I think about Tom. Tom's really a pretty good guy after all. But then, even more importantly, the real beneficiary is not the one being appreciated, but the one doing the appreciating. Because when you're doing authentic appreciations, you have no choice. You cannot do an authentic appreciation without opening your heart and extending love. And that just goes along with it. So when you do appreciations and you do rounds of it, and you're appreciating people and thanking them, thanking your team, thanking your members of your group, it bonds the group together and it opens the collective heart of the group, and that really helps people to connect. I encourage you to experiment with this. You'll find it's a very, very powerful technology. It's very simple to do. In fact, at Whole Foods, it's so powerful that we limit appreciations to 3. You're only allowed to appreciate 3 people, otherwise we never get out of the meeting.
Very cool.
Perfect. Thank you.
Willie?
So, as you were growing Whole Foods, was there ever a situation...
Still
maybe-
growing Whole Foods.
Or still, yeah, accurate. Where maybe you were evaluating a vendor, whether it be IT or anything else, and ultimately a small vendor, 15, 20 employees, larger vendor, 150 employees, that the small vendor won? And if
Sure.
so, why did the small vendor win?
Because we thought they'd do a better job. Being big that can just be more bureaucracy. So it's what do we need and who can provide it best is the question we're always asking about it for a supplier. And of course, we'll look at the relative price bids as well. So there's not a simple answer, but you want to do business with people that you think will do the best job for you, that have the most skill, the most competency, and people also that I think you naturally kind of like. I think that's why sales still remains very important. We tend to want to do business with people that we like, that we think that people that we have a kind of a good feeling that we can trust. Trust is so important in business, right? So if you have a feeling that I can trust this CEO of the smaller supplier, then that's more important practically than anything else. Because, who here hasn't sometime or another been taken advantage of and screwed somehow or another by somebody you're doing business with? So trust is so important. It's important, like we sign leases all the time, and we have some horrible landlords that are like, and increasingly we're trying to make sure the real estate team is like, because if you get a really bad landlord, it comes out and bites you later on. They'll try to cancel your lease, or they'll try to add on extra charges to you, and you end up in litigation all the time with somebody. So trust is very important. And I think if you're trying to win an account, you need to come across as you need to be, and also communicate that you are somebody who's trustworthy, is going to bust their butts, and is going to do a really, really good job for the client. I think you can beat Goliath when you come at it from that angle.
Definitely. Okay, Stima?
Thank you for being here. I hear we are supposed to be getting a Whole Foods in Rochester, New York soon, so I can't wait.
We are. That's Wegmans' home turf, so we've been a little
Yes.
reluctant to go in there, but we're doing okay in Albany and Buffalo, so we're ready to take on the beast in their cave.
Yes, we do love our Wegmans, but I hear lots of good things about
Everybody likes a choice.
That's right. That's right. So I wanted to ask you about one of the tenet, the leadership tenet, and you certainly have a vision, and as you hire people, what are some ways to instill that your vision for the company is being carried out through all the employees, and being a servant leader that you talked about?
First, if you're the entrepreneur, almost by definition, you have a sense of purpose. That's what entrepreneurs do. We are purpose providers. However, most of the time, that purpose is implicit. it may not even be fully conscious to the entrepreneur herself or himself. So part of your job is to become more conscious about what you're trying to do with the business. What are you trying to create? What type of value creation are you trying to do? And you need to make that very explicit through the organization. That's one of the leaders' most important jobs. Here's where we're going. Here's what we're going to create together. I want to make sure everybody's on the same page about what we're all about. So that's very important to do. And many entrepreneurs just take it for granted. Everybody's going to work as hard as they do and will care as much as they do. And then they're disappointed when other people don't. And the other people don't even, the members of their team maybe not even know what they're trying to accomplish. They just need a paycheck. They need a job. They got a family to support. So providing that type of guidance and leadership is important. Secondly, you got to lead by example. Ultimately, people pay a lot more attention to what you do than what you say. And that's just, it's a cliche, but you know it's true. And so you have to exemplify the type of leadership that you want to see in your company. If you're not going to be that leader, then you probably just step aside and let somebody else do it. And I think maybe thirdly, you have to be the one that holds the standards up for the company. The values, I'm not talking about communicating the purpose. I'm talking about your ethics. I'm talking about what you will not allow. And you have to be, if you make exceptions, and you're not consistent, and if you're not caring and fair, you got to be caring and fair. You've got these polarities. You have to kind of you got to do both of them pretty well. But people pay a lot of attention to the choices and actions that you do, and you got to make sure that you are making good, wise choices, because they'll come back and bite you later on if you don't.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to probably make this the last question because we're getting close on time. So,
Okay, thank you for being here. Mergers and acquisitions are a great way to grow businesses and continue to innovate. So when you do that and you're under NDA, what advice can you give to entrepreneurs that are doing that to help vision and bring the people along? Because it's very much about building trust.
And you're talking about your own team?
If you're involved in mergers and acquisitions, you're blending these teams together. What advice or tips can you give to them to bring the people along to continue to build trust and intertwine and blend the why so that they have a sense of stability? Because when you're in this new relationship, you don't know how it's all going to transpire and these sorts of things, and it's important to bring your people along. So what advice?
You mean after the acquisition happens, right? Is it before or after we're talking about?
It's before. It's before, but obviously the top leaders are going to know what's going on. It's how do you bring the people along?
You can't. I mean, if you haven't, the NDA prevents you from doing it, so you really can't. I mean, in Whole Foods' case, Amazon made it very clear that if a deal leaked out into the media, they were going to walk. Now, that might have been a bluff, but wasn't a bluff I was going to call. So we didn't let that many people know. A lot of people were mad at me when they found out about the deal because they didn't know and they weren't in the know, and so they resented that fact. But to me, it was like, well, we signed an NDA, and we also have a threat that the deal will fall apart if it leaks out. And so there were many people that I ordinarily would have told, but I didn't tell. And so I couldn't bring the team along. But what we did is after the deal was announced, we went our whole senior leadership team got to every region in our company and met with the leaders from every store team leader, every coordinator. We went on a week-long blitz and got everywhere and told everybody what was going to happen. So we couldn't bring them in to the deal happen, but as soon as the deal was announced, we made up for lost time. And I personally covered the entire East Coast in a week and met with literally thousands and thousands of people to talk about it. And then we've been over-communicating ever since, as much as we could. And now that the deal's closed, we're definitely, because one of the things that it's very important to me is have a successful integration in this merger. This is like, I really am committed to this going extremely well. Whole Foods has acquired 25 companies in our history. So I know to a certain extent what it's like to be on the other side. So I always say it, we acquired 25 companies, but you're really only acquired once. and so we're living on the other side of that now. So I can tell you there's things you can do that are good in a merger. You're talking about before, but I can talk about afterwards a little bit. I'll do that now. In a merger, in my experience, about 20% of the people think it's the greatest thing that ever happened from the very first day. And about 20% think it's a total disaster and that they wish this had never happened. No matter how good it is, the good old days were always better. And then about 60% are on the fence. They're taking a wait-and-see attitude, whether this is going to be good for them or not. If you want to have a successful merger, in my experience, it takes about 2 years. You've got to take the 20% that are enthusiasts, and you've got to empower them to be your missionaries with everybody else. And there are ways you can do that through promotions and through recognition. And then they will work on the other 60% who are on the fence. And then when you get a critical mass, it will tip. And when it tips, everybody that's kind of on the fence makes a decision to either throw their lot in or leave. And then people begin to exit who don't think the merger is good for them. There will still be a hardcore of about 10% of the people that, unless you force them to leave after a few years, they're just kind of like toxic waste remaining in the deal. So you've got to try to push those folks out. So so I'll say one other thing, like what we're doing with Amazon, which I think is important. We want this to be a conscious merger. So we got to make sure, how many people here are married? Most people here are, right? All right, so I've been married for 26 years. So again, using the marriage metaphor. Well, in a successful marriage, in a happy marriage, there's going to be a me, there's going to be a he or a she, and there's going to be a we. And all three have to be respected and nurtured. It's important that you know who you are and that your purpose and your values do not disappear in the marriage. At the same time, you have to honor your mate, and you have to let him or her fulfill their own purposes and have their own identity. And then there's going to be and the we is the shared identity that the two of you create together. Now, I think a merger with companies is not a whole lot different than that. Whole Foods will never going to be, people always say Whole Foods is going to be completely smashed by Amazon. Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, first of all, we're like 15 years older than Amazon is. And we have a very powerful culture, and we have a very strong sense of purpose and identity. We have a very strong me. Now, Amazon is a very powerful you, and we love them. So we want to take a lot of their purpose and culture and values and the way they do things consciously into Whole Foods market to help us transform ourselves. So our task is to decide, what is it that we are unwilling to change? Because it's quintessential what we are. And then everything else is kind of up for grabs. And we're doing this consciously. We're doing a retreat together pretty soon, in a couple of weeks. And we're going to consciously merge purpose and values and culture, at least from Whole Foods perspective. And then we will be a good partner for Amazon, because we're not a reluctant partner. We're a very happy, enthusiastic partner. But we also are who we are. And we can't be who we aren't. So you got to figure out who you are and what you can't change. But then also with your partner, what is it about your partner that you find so attractive that you want that to be part of who you are? And then together you create that new shared self. That may be too, but I don't know if that is helpful at all, but that's how I think about it.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, guys, so we're going to have to wrap up. And look at that, right?
Look at
Almost
that.
on the money.
We're on the money because we're done.
It's like you've done this before.